Hello, and welcome to today's webinar on modern IT operations, brought to you by Insight Cloud and Data Center Transformation, as well as Dell Technologies. I'm Christy Satchery, Marketing Manager at Insight, and will be your moderator today. Before we begin, I want to cover a few housekeeping items. This webcast is designed to be interactive between you and the presenters. The webcast console you're looking at can be completely customized. You can resize or move any of the windows that you have open. If you have questions during the webcast, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your question. All questions in this webcast will be captured. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties, please visit the webcast help guide by clicking on the question mark icon below the presentation window. This help guide covers common technical issues. I would now like to turn it over this presentation to our presenters, Grant Bashar and Juan Orlandini. Grant, the floor is yours.
Great, thanks Christy, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for bearing with us on a little bit of a reschedule we had from the original timing of this event just a couple of weeks ago. As Christy mentioned, my name is Grant Bashir, and I am responsible for the overall relationship between Dell Technologies and our partner Insight. Juan, are you going to drive this event, or do you want me to click the next slide?
I'll go ahead and click next, Grant.
Great. So that is Juan Orlandini. He is the Chief Technology Officer at Insight, and he's going to be taking you through more of a technical presentation here in just a moment. But before we get to that, I wanted to take just a moment to brief you on the partnership between Insight and Dell Technologies. Insight is one of Dell Technologies' largest partners, not just in the US, but globally as well. Literally a top 3 partner, if that tells you anything, across our entire ecosystem. They are a titanium black partner. I know that sounds really interesting. What does titanium black mean? Well, it means a lot more than just sales. Yes, Insight is a large partner that generates a lot of Dell Technologies revenue in their business. You can see last year in the upper right, Insight drove $7.7 billion in revenue just for the US, and $1.1 billion of that revenue was Dell Technologies revenue across our family of companies. But to be a titanium black partner requires so much more than just revenue generation. We have very tight executive relationships across, whether it's the CEO, president, and other executive leadership team members at Insight with their peer group at Dell Technologies. And that's just the tip of the iceberg from a collaboration perspective. That collaboration across our organization trickles down into frontline sales management, sales teams, operations, marketing, etc. And we really work together to identify opportunities in the market where we can bring joint solutions, where we can take Dell Technologies solutions with the capabilities of Insight, bring those together, and really come up with solutions that are designed for you to meet the customer's business needs, to help you drive innovation in your business and help you drive that transformation, help you address those challenges that you face within your environments today. Behind that, we have a tremendous amount of investment between Dell Technologies and Insight, and we have over 70 team members, whether they are Dell Technologies badged team members or Insight team members that wake up every day and focus on this partnership and, again, focus on driving those solutions for you. You'll see that Insight wins a number of recognition awards from Dell Technologies over the years, many Partner of the Year awards, and this latest one coming out of 2020 was Excellence in Growth. Not just, again, from a revenue perspective, but Insight and Dell Technologies together really went and addressed the customer's needs in the data center to help them acquire technologies that met their needs, and we really drove growth in that area together. And as we enter into 2021 and continue 2021, we will continue focus in the data center together. Next slide. And so what this highlights here is, if you look on the left of each quadrant of this slide, those are Insight's solution areas. So Insight, kind of starting on the bottom right, foundationally is known for its supply chain optimization solution area. That's the ability to help customers acquire technology, drive efficiencies in that supply chain, bring all those different technologies together and deliver an end solution to the customer in a timely manner across both hardware, software, and services. And then through that kind of core solution area, they have 3 other solution areas that are focused on just that, solutions for your customers, whether that's digital innovation to really help you drive transformation across applications and those efficiencies in that area for your business. Connected workforce. I think we all learned over the last year how important having a connected workforce solution is to enabling your customers within your environment across your endpoints to be able to access applications and work from anywhere and do that in a secure fashion. And of course, there's always transformation in the data center. And that's what Juan is going to talk to you about today is cloud and data center transformation and how Dell Technologies and Insight can help you manage through that transformation in this multi-cloud environment that we're all faced with today. And then what you see across to the right of each one of those areas are Dell transformational pillars that really align to Insight's focus areas and their solution areas. And what that all means is the collaboration that I mentioned before is really supported by the fact that Dell Technologies and Insight really have some fundamental core beliefs that align, and that just helps us be better partners together. So with that said, we've got a great opportunity between Insight and Dell Technologies to help serve you as our common customer and meet some of those needs for you that you have in your environments today. And I'll hand it off to Juan Orlandini to talk a little bit more about that. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Grant. I appreciate it. Can you hear me, Grant? I want to make sure that you, all right. So I accidentally hit a mute button there. I'm sorry. Now everybody can hear me. And hello, everybody. As Grant said, Juan Orlandini, Chief Architect for Insight's Cloud and Data Center Transformation Solution Area, which is one of these things that's on the screen over here. I'm going to show you a slightly different view as to the organization of those 4 pillars that we have inside of our team. Supply chain is a foundational element to everything that we do. Regardless of if you're acquiring devices or you're doing next generation application development or you're transforming your data centers to have best of breed compute, storage, networking, security, hybrid cloud, all of those, they need to have a great supply chain underneath it. The boxes above that represent our solution areas, the connected workforce, which is our workforce modernization team, digital innovation on the right, which is our development team that really does the digital transformation, and CDCT, which is the organization that I sit under that does cloud and data center transformation. We are chartered with modernizing the platform that supports either one of those other 2 organizations as well. However, for today's conversation, I'm really going to focus on how does a developer organization and a data center organization really get closer together. And in fact, that's what we've done internally. If you look on what's on the screen right now, you'll see that there's CDCT, my organization, that's sitting on the left-hand side. See, developers really don't care about this stuff. You know, the developers don't want to know about a storage array or your networking switching or your security layers or whatever it is that you have on the floor. What they really care about is how can they develop an application faster, develop it securely, develop it so that it's meeting the business goals of the organization. Right? And what Insight has done is created both of those teams so that we can meet in the middle and deliver those results to our clients. And through that, we've developed a few things that will help you as internal IT providers to do the same things for your own organizations. So the way that we see the world is that our client environments are extremely diverse. There's still mainframes out there, mid-ranges out there, client server, cloud, hybrid, public cloud, microservices. Serverless is a big thing now. Unit kernels are coming out, and there's a whole bunch of other things that are coming out. Challenges is that the skill sets and language between IT operations and the development teams vary broadly. And it's a significant challenge because IT teams were very siloed in their language or even in their operations. So you had a storage team, and you had a networking team, and you had a virtualization team. And developers were sitting off doing the magic that they do off in a completely different world, using a similar language that meant completely different things. And now that we're starting to see them trying to come together, it's been very, very challenging. However, we're seeing that clients that are nimble, that are able to adapt and survive to these things, are the ones that are surviving not just the awful year that we just went through, But in the ever-changing landscape of our businesses, we're seeing digital transformation happening at all times. Nobody wants to get Ubered out of business. So you have to have digital dexterity so you can address any business challenges that come around. To support that, developers are asking for just a framework that lets them deliver this nimbleness, this agility. So how do we do that, all right? Insight CDCT really fits in as a mechanism to help you deliver from the IT operations to the developers what they're looking for. And there's some changes that you have to undergo. There's some cultural changes. There might be some platform changes, and platform can be lots of things. It could be a modernized storage platform. It could be a modernized security platform, a networking platform. But it could also include things like a little bit higher up in the stack, and I'll get into that here a little bit. Like, hey, you need to go into a containerized workload where you have a Kubernetes cluster that now you have to figure out how to run and support. And I'll tell you, most developers, they don't want to run Kubernetes, they want to consume Kubernetes. So who's left running the Kubernetes? Well, that's us, the IT folks, all right? So we have to figure out how to do that. But we have to figure out how to do that in their language and in the context that makes them successful, and I'll cover that a little bit more. So to do that, you also have to do some strategy, some design, some implementation of those modern platforms. And then you have to bring it all in under automation. And automation is a very broad term, and I almost hate using it because it's been washed out by marketing, right? What we're talking about is how do we make things declarative in nature so that, hey, I want my environment to look like this, and then the system does that. And you don't have to worry about, hey, I need to configure my zoning on the storage or my routing on my switching or whatever it is that you need to end up doing. The system takes care of all those things, and that's what we're talking about in automation. And it's really foundational work that you have to do in order to do the transformation that you're looking to do. The way we see it is that there's really two buyers of IT stuff, all right? So there's the IT teams, and it's made up primarily of CIOs, legacy IT, VP of IT, operations, those kinds of folks. That team is primarily focused on systems management. ITSM is still hugely important, right? Regardless of where you do your compute. Infrastructure lifecycle, security, and it should be security, and DR and compliance, right? But what they really are being asked to deliver now is an API-first service delivery. You've got to remember that the way the developers look at the world, and this is kind of tongue-in-cheek, but not really, is there's a developer, there's API, and then there's magic, right? And that's what we mean by APIs-first service delivery, is the IT teams are delivering that magic. Automated deployments, modern hybrid platforms, security, continuous monitoring. I'm sure you've heard the term observability. The ability to deliver observability, that's an IT ops kind of a thing. Developers, on the other hand, are focused on innovation and really as driven by the VP of App Dev and those kinds of folks. They're worried more about product lifecycle management, software development, app modernization, and all they're asking for from IT is a rapid infrastructure development pipeline. I want to be able to do DevOps. That means I need to have a CI/CD pipeline that I can spin up really quick for my new product or project that I'm trying to run. And once I spin it up, I want to be able to measure how well am I doing, how well is the system doing, and I want to make sure that it's running within the constraints of the security regulations that I need to have for the organization, whether they're internal, keep the bad actors away, or if it's an external because I might have HIPAA or GDPR or whatever it is. They want the system to take care of that. They don't want to do that. So at Insight, well, we've come to realize that if you're trying to do this DevOps thing that we've all heard about, and it's that infinite loop, and there's DevOps and all that other stuff with Dev on the left and Ops on the right, that all needs to run on a substrate. And that's what what's on the graphic. And if you were to see this on the PowerPoint, I did an amazing job of 3D animation that did not translate to this platform. So I'm sorry you don't get to see my amazing 3D animation. But what it's really showing you is that DevOps really sits on top of a infrastructure, a platform, a substrate. And that substrate, we call in modern IT operations. So how do you run this stuff to support the Dev and Ops teams? And the way we approach this is by taking some core competencies that you need to be able to deliver. Because if you really look at it, once you start figuring out what is that substrate, it's really, how do I deliver my infrastructure through automation? How do I make sure that I can declaratively, as a developer, say, hey, I want my environment to look like this, check in that piece of code that declares that, and then have the infrastructure build that up for you. And there's some magic that happens with that, and I'll talk about that here in a second. There's programmable networks, and here we're including things like SD-WAN or software-defined networks. And inside of the data center, there's lots of different kinds of programmable networks that you want to be able to do. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is provide the ability to say, hey, I want to have this thing, be able to talk to this thing, make it happen. Right? And that's really, really hard if you do it by hand. The next one, I'm sorry, I got distracted by a question in the Q&A. The next one is security in software and infrastructure delivery. I cannot stress how important security is. I mean, we've all heard the bad news in the news from all of the hacking and all of the cryptoware and the ransomware. And, you know, you have to have a layered approach that encompasses everything in your environment. So you have to have perimeter defenses. You have to have the ability to detect inbound attacks. You have to have the ability to detect side communications that might be a indicator of an attack that's ongoing. And even more fundamentally, all the way down to having a good backup, right? How do I have a good backup so that if they get past all of my stuff, I can do a quick recovery? Right? I'm a backup guy. I've been doing backups forever. I never once got a high five for doing backups, but I sure got yelled at or high five for doing restores or not doing restores. So you got to boil it down to those fundamentals. Then the next competency area is this intelligent monitoring, which really couples into the SRE approach. In intelligent monitoring, what you're looking at is two views to the world. There's the APM side of the house. So how's my application performing? If I click on this button, is it doing everything that it's supposed to be doing and flowing all the way down to the database? Is it responsive? If it's not, what service is not responsive? Is it my network? Is it those kinds of things? That's the APM view. Because we are in an infrastructure world that might be on premises, you also still have to have the infrastructure monitoring tool. So, hey, is this service up, ping, just ping this guy. Is my storage performing properly? Is my network routing still configured like I would expect? Do I have any kind of drift that happened by accident, by bad code pushes, those kinds of things? You need to monitor both of those, and they need to live together. And as an infrastructure team, you have to be able to provide all of that stuff. And then if you're going to live in the hybrid world, and all of the data that we have from studies that we've done, that our partners have done, that the industry as a whole has done, is that we are going to be living in a hybrid world, which means that you're going to have one or more clouds, probably more than one. You're also going to continue to run on-premises infrastructure for either your traditional workloads or workloads that are developed like the public cloud, but you want to run on an on-premises form factor. Whichever it is, if you're going to do that in the hybrid world, you need to have some platforms that support that. And increasingly, that's becoming what's called the cloud-native development frameworks. And that's things like a Kubernetes, and it might be functions as a service, or it could be lots of those kinds of things, and you need to be able to provide those and extract those away from the multiple clouds. So you don't get tied into one of the clouds when you really might be ready to move to another cloud. So you have to build these things out so that you can do that. So there's a lot of skills that go into that, into these competencies, right? And the reason we call them competencies, by the way, and we didn't call them pillars, is because you have to have all five of them working in conjunction. You can start by working on one of these, or you can start working on multiples of these. But at the end of the day, if you want to be able to deliver this modern IT operations view of the world, you have to have all of these competencies by your teams, or you're just not going to get there. All right, and we can help you make those transitions with either individual competency deliverables and/or help you bridge the gap across all of them. And I'm going to skip over this one because there's a lot of words, and I should have probably not included this slide. But just a view of the different kinds of things that you end up doing, like CI/CD pipeline build and all that. I'm going to transition to a slightly different view. And this is the developer's view of the world. How does a developer end up looking at the world? And what they're really looking for in order to do their development job is they need to have some services available to them. So something like a source code control system. And by the way, these logos are just representative. Don't read into them too much because you could replace them with about a bazillion. In each one of these little boxes, there's about a bazillion different vendors that are in there, and we can help you navigate that. But they're looking for things like a source code control system, a build system so that they can build and test and scan, a change management system so they can keep track of what's happening in their environment, something that allows you to deploy and test in the deployment. You need to do some dependency mapping, some artifact management, those kinds of things. This is the stuff that the developers want. And if in the past you built a private cloud and you had no developers consume it from you, which, by the way, I did. I built a private cloud on all sorts of amazing automated VMware deployments. We turned it over to the developers, and they looked at it, and they said, eh. And then they went to the public cloud. It's because what I wasn't giving them was one of these, right? It didn't have these things. What I was giving them was VMs that might have been connected, but then they still had to layer all of these things on top of that. So this is what developers want. They want to be able to instantiate this stuff, consume this stuff, and then on top of that, write their code. So for them, the code is important. This stuff supports the ability to run that code, monitor that code, modify that code, and then move on to the next product. Underneath that DevOps architecture, though, is the infrastructure that supports that. And that's where you start seeing that monitoring stuff that I was talking about. Hey, how do I start using something like a Datadog or a Splunk and then there's a whole bunch of those things. There's AppD, there's a whole bunch of these things. And some of them compete, some of them cooperate. Again, don't worry about it too much. We can certainly help you through all of that stuff, all right? This monitoring really allows your SREs and maybe even your devs to start figuring out when are things running. Containers, again, I mentioned this earlier. Developers don't want to run containers. They want to consume containers. They don't want to manage them, right? They want to be able to instantiate a container so they can connect services and move on, and that's what they do, right? This learning, automation, all of that stuff, that's really an infrastructure team's effort. So it's the ops side of the DevOps thing and also that substrate layer that I was talking about. But if you're in the on-premises mode, there's another layer below that. We call it the cloud architecture. And it's really, it could be one of the public clouds, and that's a lot of the magic gets done by them. But if you're going to do it on premises, whether it's on your facility or in a shared facility like an Equinix, you have to take stuff like what Dell brings to the table or VMware brings to the table or Cisco brings to the table, and there's a whole bunch of those players that you need to worry about, and create that bottommost substrate on top of which you can do the automation, on top of which you can build your DevOps pipelines. So if you can do all of those things, you can end up in a really, really fantastic place where your developers are going to start looking at you going, wow, you finally get it. I can do my job. That's amazing. I want to support that. So Dell is really an amazing piece of technology that supports us. Dell brings amazing pieces of technology that support this vision that I was telling you about. So it ties into that programmable infrastructure. Right? It very much is built from the ground up so that I can create those declarative environments that I can say, hey, I want my containers to look like this, or my network, or my application. And they have all of the APIs, they have the software-defined infrastructure, they have the hooks into whether it's VMware or Kubernetes infrastructure, the Ansible automations it's tied in, and it's all there. So you don't have to go do a lot of that grunt work, and we can help you with some of that and tie it together. And it really eliminates a lot of that manual steps that we used to have to do. You know, I grew up as a storage admin back in the day, and you to provision the LUN, to provision it to storage, that was actually highly skilled labor because it was hard. It was really, really hard back in the day. We know how to do that now. We can delegate that to the system, and that's literally what PowerStore has done for us. Is it allows us to declare, I want my storage to look like this, go off and do it. There's the autonomous side of it, all right? So if you want to increase more capabilities into your infrastructure or your infrastructure is growing, there's a great way for you to just do that, and the system recognizes those changes. So when you start doing your things, it is handled automatically by the environment. And on top of that, I remember I talked about observability and some of the views that you have to have, both from the application side, but also from the infrastructure side. PowerStore includes a lot of that infrastructure view built into it. So how do I take this proactive health analytics that they capture and have the system self-heal itself, self-alert? Hey, I think I'm going to lose this, or this isn't configured right, or there's a new patch or a new version of this. I need to do some monitoring. How do I go take care of these things? That's built right into PowerStore, which eliminates a lot of the heavy lift from having to do this on your own. There's also VxRail, and I don't know that this chart imported properly, but we'll check it out. A little bit of a seat of the pants presentation here. All right. A good way to think about it when you're building out this cloud native thing or the things that we've been talking about, there's two types of workloads that you have to run. All right. There's the very detail-oriented kind of workloads that you have to do that are, SAP is a good example of that. I got to be very, very careful about how I run SAP, or SAP themselves won't support you. Or say if you're in healthcare, Epic is incredibly prescriptive as to how they want the environment to be configured. So you build those as your babies that you have to manage, and that's great. You're always going to have these workloads. But then there's also some other workloads that are easier to define. They fall into t-shirt sizes. That might be a small, medium, large, extra large. And as long as I can provide those kinds of things, then, I should build an infrastructure that's built for that kind of stuff. So I can just create t-shirt sizes and not worry about it, not spend the same amount of engineering time as I would have for that Epic or that SAP or one of those kinds of things. And VxRail, the hyperconverged infrastructure that Dell brings to the table, is exactly that. Think of them as not necessarily the SAP or the Epic. You can maybe run those, but maybe you shouldn't. They're the t-shirt size thing. And within that, though, you can have lots of different kinds of t-shirts that let you do applications for ERP, relational databases, EMR. A lot of this cloud native stuff is spin up a whole bunch of stuff and spin it down as fast as you can, tear it up, tear it down. That's perfect for something where the infrastructure is already predefined in t-shirt sizes. It provides t-shirt sizes to you, and then the end user ends up just using it. It makes it a lot easier for you to do a lot of these things, right? Content repositories, home directories, that's all t-shirt size stuff. Why would you want to have some of your smart people figuring out how to build these things if it's already been predefined, pre-built in a hybrid cloud model or in a hyper-converged model where you can just, as you need more capacity, you just grow it and remove it and those kinds of things. So those are the two kinds of things that you can do. PowerStore is the more, I got to be a lot more careful. VxRail is more the t-shirt size model, and they can coexist with each other. Nothing's to say that I have to be all one versus the other. You can absolutely do this stuff with both of them, right? And the nice thing about VxRail is they're protocol agnostic, and they can do this regardless of how you want to interconnect all of your, and I'm going to use the word that I like to use, gizmos and gadgets, all right? In a hybrid model, Dell also brings a lot of very unique capabilities because you can really truly build a hybrid environment that starts all the way at the edge, whether the edge is defined as a factory for you or even at a retail store. And we have examples of where we've used VxRail, which is great for these remote offices where you might not have IT staff and all you just want is like a box that you ship out and it gets managed, all the way to the core, whatever the core is for you, where you're having those very prescriptive, very well-defined size things, plus also maybe some of the t-shirt stuff, all the way to the cloud. And in the cloud, you can leverage the same kinds of technologies that start all the way at the very edge that you run in your data center. You can run the same things in the cloud, and that allows you that mobility between all of those locations. And that's really what you're looking at when you're looking at a hybrid cloud storage. You want to have the ability to move regardless of what location it is. Because I'll tell you, there's many, many examples that we run into where a client starts with either an on-premises and then they decide to move to the public cloud. Great story, all right? Or they start with one cloud and they need to move to another cloud. And if you've made the wrong architectural choices from the very beginning, that movement, whichever one happens to be, becomes very, very challenging. So my encouragement to you is take a look at it. And look at this stuff and see if it meets your business goals, right? If it does, then this is a pretty good way of making sure that you have the hybrid mobility so that you as an organization can make an intelligent decision what services and what products do I want to run on what, whenever that makes sense for you. And it could be a cloud-to-cloud migration, data center to cloud, whatever that is, this gives you the capability of doing that. So with that, I think we're right at time. Is there any questions in the chat, Christy, that I can answer?
There is not. We had one question regarding the preview of this, and I did mention that the webcast will be available on demand afterwards. So to get that answered, but if there's any other questions, we are happy to answer those. If you want to drop those in the Q&A, we will get back to you. But otherwise, thank you for attending the webcast. And you will, again, be receiving a notification once the recording is available. Thank you again for participating in today's webcast.
Thank you all.